The first time Captain Elias Mercer saw the alien princess, she was perched on the edge of a collapsed starport, pale blue eyes reflecting the neon glow of distant nebulae. Smoke and sparks from destroyed battle drones filled the air, making it nearly impossible to see clearly. Yet, in that chaos, she seemed untouchable, fragile yet commanding, her translucent gown shimmering like liquid crystal. Elias had been sent on a routine reconnaissance mission with the 12th Interstellar Brigade, a unit specialized in deep space planetary interventions. The mission was simple: recover intel and extract any key personnel if necessary. Yet, nothing about this assignment would ever be simple again. The moment the enemy drones appeared, a swarm of insectoid combat machines from the Zarkari Collective, Elias instinctively threw himself in front of her. He had seen enough reports of alien diplomats being captured or executed during conflicts, and something about her defiant stare, told him she was more than just royalty. "Step back," he yelled, firing his plasma rifle. The swarm hesitated, recalculating the threat, giving him enough time to shield her behind a pile of twisted metal. Sparks danced over his armor, and a drone's pulse cannon grazed his shoulder. Pain seared through him, but he didn't flinch. The princess's lips parted in what might have been fear or curiosity. "Why?" she asked softly, her accent lilting and strange. Elias didn't answer. Actions spoke louder than words, and he didn't have the luxury of conversation in the middle of a firefight. Another wave of drones approached. This time, he grabbed the princess, pressing her behind him as he advanced, using his body as a moving shield. The battle was brief, but brutal. When the last drone exploded in a fiery arc, Elias slumped to one knee, exhausted, his armor scorched and smoking. The princess stared at him with a mix of shock and awe. "You saved me," she whispered. Elias wiped soot from his cheek. "You're welcome," he muttered. Little did he know that those words had unknowingly bound him to a life debt he couldn't escape. By the time they returned to the princess's homeworld, Eloria, Elias realized that nothing would be simple again. The planet was an ocean of glowing crystal towers and floating gardens, a civilization far beyond Earth's technology. Hovercrafts buzzed overhead like giant iridescent insects, and the citizens moved with grace and precision, their eyes reflecting light like gemstones. The palace was an enormous structure carved from a single piece of luminescent crystal, its walls vibrating with an energy that humans could only feel, not see. The princess, whose name Elias learned was Liara, led him through corridors that seemed alive, whispering in soft, harmonic tones. "Your actions on Xylar Prime," she said as they walked, "have earned you a debt of honor. You have saved my life. And now, I am bound to repay you." Elias stopped mid-step. "I didn't do it for repayment," he said. "I did it because it was the right thing to do." Liara's eyes darkened, and a faint hum filled the air, as if the palace itself had heard his words. "Life debt is not about intention," she said. "It is about consequence. My survival belongs to you, and you belong to me." He felt a chill, not from the crystal air, but from the weight of her words. The next few days were a blur of political intrigue and ceremonial protocol. Elias was treated as an honored guest, yet he felt imprisoned. Every movement, every glance, reminded him that he was now part of a world he barely understood. Liara watched him constantly, a quiet intensity that made his heart race even when he didn't want it to. It wasn't until the council meeting that the full extent of his debt became clear. "Captain Mercer," the High Chancellor said, his voice like molten steel, "your actions have not only saved our princess, but prevented a full-scale invasion. Liara's life debt to you grants her the right to call upon you whenever she chooses. Your honor, your service are now hers." Elias swallowed hard. I didn't sign up for this. I'm a soldier, not some servant. Liara stepped forward, her gaze sharp yet unreadable. You are not a servant, she said. You are the shield that kept me alive. And now, the galaxy itself demands we fulfill the balance of that act. Elias wanted to protest, but the words died in his throat. He had a sinking feeling that arguing wouldn't change the decree. The first real test came 3 nights later. The palace alarm blared, a shrill, crystalline wail that seemed to shake the very air. Aliens, armed with plasma blades and electromagnetic rifles, had breached the outer gardens. Liara moved with a fluid grace, directing guards and civilians to safety. But Elias realized immediately that the attackers were not ordinary thieves or mercenaries. These were bounty hunters from the Karate Syndicate, a gang known for tracking down high-value targets across star systems. And their target was Liara. You're coming with me, Elias said, grabbing her arm. I can handle myself, Liara countered. You can survive, yes, he said, but not without me. Remember the debt. Let me protect you. She hesitated for the briefest moment, then nodded. That was all he needed. Together, they fought their way through the palace gardens. Elias moved like a human hurricane, firing and dodging, while Liara unleashed strange waves of energy from her hands. He realized then that she wasn't just a princess. She was a warrior, her powers honed for survival, her intellect sharper than any soldier he'd met. By the time the last hunter fell, Elias was bleeding from multiple wounds, his armor shredded in places. Liara knelt beside him, her fingers glowing as she healed the worst of his injuries with a luminescent touch. You risk everything for me, she whispered. I told you it's my duty, he replied. Her smile was soft but tinged with a dangerous edge. Your duty, and now, your life is mine. Weeks turned into months. Elias learned the intricacies of Elorian politics, the subtle art of crystal-based warfare, and the delicate negotiations between interstellar alliances. He trained with Liara daily, sometimes sparring, sometimes strategizing, always under the watchful eyes of the council. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the life debt transformed into something else. Elias found himself drawn to her intellect, her fearlessness, her laughter that sounded like wind chimes across a glass canyon. Liara, in turn, began to rely on him not just as her protector, but as a confidant, a partner, someone who understood the weight of leadership and the burden of survival. Yet a shadow loomed over them. The Karate Syndicate was not finished, and neither were the factions within the Elorian Council that resented a human-wielding influence. Each mission, each confrontation, reminded Elias that the debt was not a simple token of gratitude. It was a binding force that could demand everything from him, including life, loyalty, and perhaps even love. The ultimate trial came during the siege of Iridian Spire, the capital's central crystal tower. A coalition of rogue planets, led by a warlord named Voss, had united against Eloria. The council had prepared defenses, but Elias knew they would not hold for long. Liara turned to him, her face lit by the glow of the twin moons above the spire. Elias, this is where the debt demands everything. Will you fight with me? He met her gaze, saw the trust and expectation shining there, and nodded. To the end. The battle was a storm of energy and steel. Elias moved with precision and instinct, shielding Liara from collapsing walkways, energy blasts, and enemy boarding parties. Liara fought alongside him, her power slicing through enemy formations, creating shields of light, and striking with pinpoint accuracy. At the peak of the conflict, Voss himself confronted them. Towering and armored, He wielded a weapon that could tear through crystal walls as easily as flesh. Elias stepped forward, placing himself between Liara and the warlord. "Your debt is mine to fulfill," he said, his voice steady. Liara's eyes glowed, and she unleashed a wave of energy that shattered Kale's defenses long enough for Elias to strike the final blow. Together, they stood victorious, breathing heavily amidst the ruins of Iridian Spire. Later, in the quiet aftermath, Liara approached Elias in the palace gardens, her expression unguarded for the first time. "You fulfilled your duty," she said softly. "But now the debt is no longer about protection. It's about choice." Elias frowned. "Choice." "Yes," she said, reaching for his hand. "You chose to shield me, to fight for me, to survive with me. And now you can choose what comes next. I cannot demand anything more, but I can offer everything." For the first time, Elias understood that the life debt was not a chain. It was a bond forged in fire, battle, and trust. And bonds like that sometimes led to something greater than duty. He took her hand in return, the stars of Eloria reflected in their joined fingers. "Then I choose to face everything with you." Liara smiled, and for the first time, Elias saw her not as a princess in need of protection but as a partner, an equal, a force of nature. The galaxy outside might be chaotic and merciless, but together, they could face anything. And in that moment, the life debt was no longer a burden. It was a promise. After the siege of Iridian Spire, the palace was a mosaic of fractured crystal and lingering energy echoes. Smoke and starlight mingled, casting shimmering reflections across the gardens where Elias and Liara now walked. Their footsteps were careful, measured, as if the ground itself remembered the violence that had occurred. Liara stopped beside a pool of luminescent water, its surface rippling with the reflected constellations above. She turned to Elias, her gaze soft but piercing, a mixture of gratitude, awe, and something more intimate he had not dared hope for. "You risked everything for me," she said quietly. "You shielded me not because of duty, but because it was right. That cannot be undone." Elias shrugged, trying to appear casual, though his chest still ached from exertion and adrenaline. "I didn't do it for thanks," he said. "I did it because you mattered. Because your life mattered." Liara's hand brushed his, delicate and deliberate. "The life debt, it's no longer just about survival. It's about trust, partnership, and now, choice. You fulfilled your duty, Elias. But what happens next is ours to decide." Elias exhaled slowly. Months of battles, politics, and near-death experiences had brought clarity. The debt that had once felt like a binding chain now felt like a bridge, connecting two worlds, two beings, two destinies. "I choose to stay," he said, his voice firm. "Not because I owe you anything, but because I want to. Because we've faced the galaxy together, and I'm not done yet. Not with you, not with this." Liara's smile was radiant, almost otherworldly, and yet full of warmth. She stepped closer, letting her hand rest fully in his. "Then you are truly free," she whispered. "Free to live, to fight, to love, and free to face whatever comes next, side by side." In the days that followed, Elias became more than a soldier. He became a partner, an advisor, a guardian, and something more elusive, a confidant to the princess who had once been a distant figure of legend. Together, they rebuilt the palace, integrated Eloria's fractured defenses, and established new alliances across the star systems. The people of Eloria welcomed him with cautious respect at first, but soon came to admire him, not only for his strength in battle but for his courage, humility, and unwavering commitment. Children would run up to him in the gardens, laughing as he lifted them into the air, while elders nodded approvingly, acknowledging the bond between human and princess as a symbol of unity between species. One evening, as twin moons bathed the palace in silver light, Liara and Elias stood on a balcony overlooking the crystal towers of the capital. The air was filled with the hum of distant spacecraft, the chatter of citizens, and the soft whispers of the wind. "You know," Liara said softly, leaning against him, "when I first met you on Xylar Prime, I never imagined this. That a human soldier could become the anchor of my life. And yet, here we are." Elias smiled, a rare, unguarded smile. "Life has a strange way of working out. You save me in ways I didn't know I needed, and I save you, or at least try to. We balance each other, I guess." She chuckled, the sound like a crystal bell ringing in the quiet night. "Balance," she mused. Perhaps that is what the life debt truly was, not an obligation, but a bond. A bridge between worlds, forged in trust, battle, and sacrifice. Elias felt the truth of her words deep in his bones. The galaxy was still dangerous, and new threats would surely emerge. But now, he had a purpose beyond orders, beyond duty. He had a life intertwined with Liara's, a life that promised adventure, challenges, and a connection that defied the boundaries of species, politics, and space itself. As they stood together, the stars above seemed to align in quiet approval. A new era was beginning for Eloria and for Elias, one where a human soldier and an alien princess could face the cosmos together, united by choice, respect, and something deeper than any debt: love. And in that moment, amidst the glowing towers and whispering winds, Elias knew without doubt that he would shield Liara, not out of obligation, but out of a desire that could never be repaid. For in giving her life to him, she had given him something far greater: a reason to live, to fight, and to truly belong. The galaxy outside remained chaotic, unpredictable, and merciless, but together, they were unstoppable. The life debt had transformed from a burden into a promise that would echo across the stars for generations to come. And so, Captain Elias Mercer, once just a human soldier, and Princess Liara of Eloria, once just a figure of legend, stood together, not as protector and protected, but as partners, equals, and something far more powerful: a force united, ready to face everything the universe could throw at them together.